Well, good morning and good afternoon to wherever you are calling in from. It's my delight to welcome you to this conversation called The Death Throes of Patriarchy. And as people are coming in, hope I don't miss anybody here because I'm also doing the production work here. Okay. So my name is Sandy Hart and I'm the president of SARA, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope. And again, it's my delight to welcome you to today's conversation on the thrashing tale of patriarchy, which was inspired by actually months of conversations with Ann Smith, raise your hand, Ann, and Charlotte and Pat around the words of Charlotte's book, New Earth and a Vital New World, Women Designing Eden. And this was after Pat shared a quote from one of her books that we knew what we had to do, that it was time to create a webinar. And since then, we've come up with the idea that this needs to be a series. And we got our marching orders, and here we are. So the purpose of this call and the series, which is produced by Pat and Ann and myself, and also with Pat's important involvement. It's a result, and inspired by Charlotte. It's a result of what has emerged from all of our deep conversations in our weekly meetings that we've had together. And it's really to address the multitude of ways the patriarchy has had a grip on our world that is clearly not working. And the resistance of our nature is like that of the thrashing tale of the dying dinosaur, which was so beautifully articulated and inspired by a quote of Kathy Schaff in Pat's book, Sacred Marching Orders. So if you, of course, she registered for this call, but if you're listening to the recording, you may not have read this, and it's worth repeating anyway. In the Sacred Marching Orders, Kathy says, I need to keep telling myself that these are the death throes of patriarchy, the thrashing tale of the dying dinosaur, thrashing violently about in the resistance of what is already here, which is a new paradigm. It is a new understanding of our interconnectedness and our oneness and our connection to the earth and what we owe the earth and what the earth has sacrificed for us. This is the work of the divine feminine. So each of our conversations will explore some of these conditions with the hopes to awaken us to new perspectives, including some self-awareness and personal agency. Conversations around racism and the role and the impact of men are coming up, so you can stay tuned for that. So now it's my delight to introduce you to Charlotte and Pat. So Charlotte Alling, raise your hand, Charlotte. Charlotte's perspective in the world and how it reveals itself in nature compelled us to have this conversation and further dialogue. And Charlotte really invites us through her books to ask the question, and I'm going to paraphrase Charlotte here, how are we going to be compassionate and love this world and be gardeners of it, letting go of our arrogance and attitude towards how we relate to nature? So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you.
And Patricia, oh yeah, we're happy you're here. Thank you. Patricia is a psychotherapist, or as she identifies, a psychodynamic-oriented therapist who uses the feminine perspective to healing. I first met Patricia at an event that Sarah co-produced called The Alchemy, with Anne, The Alchemy of Women's Collective Wisdom and Power. And by all accounts, she is an alchemist. She is the author of 4 books, which she also leads workshops and retreats around. They are Mining for Diamonds, Mining for Diamonds, When Women Wake Up, including its 10-year anniversary edition, Sacred Marching Orders, and the other, there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And The Other Side of the Door. And I think Marianne Williamson's foreword for Sacred Marching Orders best describes Pat's vision. And that is, women owning our power and using it collectively is what our planet desperately needs. Sacred Marching Orders is a call to women to channel our passions into healing of the world. And I love to quote Pat when she, and use this phrase wildly, and you probably have seen it if you're on my Facebook page, and that is, women need to be marching forward in circles, and that's what we are doing. Welcome to you both. And now I am just gonna be a part of your listening audience. So welcome. And Charlotte.
Yeah, so I'm so thrilled to be here and to have this conversation, and I can't wait till we open it up to hear what you all have to say. It's such a vital question in our world right now as we're moving from patriarchy. We're burning inside, we're burning outside, we're moving from patriarchy almost through this miasm or fog to this incredible future that I truly believe in. I believe that whatever words you want to give it, fifth dimension, new earth, it's there in the future, and it's our destiny to evolve to that. So to me, the most basic question, or the most urgent need we have now, is what is new earth? Not from a definition or an analytical point of view, but how is it? How does it evolve? What is it? Because it's entirely different from anything that we know here in our three-dimensional reality and patriarchy. Because patriarchy is very linear. We know a lot, we all know what that means. So the question is, where are we going? Where are we headed? And can we walk to that, to almost naked after we burn away the patriarchy, to become clear and clean and to become new earth? So the question and what we're going to be addressing here today is form, how we live, how we relate to everything we make, what that form is, and what that could possibly be in new earth. So we're going to have a short introduction of about a couple of minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of me speaking and introducing the topic, and then we're going to move over to Pat and I having questions and talking. So I'm first going to read what I call truths from my first book, which is A Vital World. And this is going to quiet us down a little bit. Nature, in her infinite beauty, power, and mystery, is the glory. Intimacy is divine sweetness. Imagination, intuition, and conception are gifts of feminine creation. Beauty is the breath of life manifest. Love is everything. The feminine, the power of tenderness, will save us. And there's something I think I want to say right now that's really important, that as the sacred feminine is rising, we've had the unbalanced masculine, which has been very violating. As the sacred feminine is rising, we will not invest, but be seated by her power. And that in turn will balance the sacred masculine, and eventually we'll have the marriage of the two, which is the ultimate purpose and the highest form of returning to the sacred web of life. So I'm going to continue reading here. The world is profoundly beautiful, graceful, and singing with the mystery of life. Divinity flowing through and in all creation is vitality. Both masculine and feminine, this energy is life, and when balanced in expression, the source of true joy and the destiny of life, making heaven on earth. And we had a conversation leading up to this webinar about what form is and what sacred geometry is. And I feel very strongly that, and it's just my opinion, that the sacred masculine makes life. It makes form, makes the structure. That's what sacred geometry is. But she is the essence. She is this profound beauty that just flows through everything, and she is the source, and she takes those bones and that making and makes this profoundly beautiful world. So between the two of them, the patriarchy thinks of form as geometry, and that's very true, but she takes it, and if we work with her, she makes this incredible beauty, which you can see behind me. So the question is, in the future, in New Earth is about being, about feeling, about becoming. There is no analytical process to there's no analysis there, there's no, and I think we can all feel that now. We can feel going from the third dimension to fifth dimension and shifting back and forth now. It's about becoming. And when you're there, you're in a complete state of grace, and that's not your head. So what is essence? And that's an essential part of this. And this quote now is from the second book, New Earth. Life is of the essence. From the unseen source, the majestic, the force, the universe, the all-power, magic love, life is manifest. What we see on this earth, what becomes, is germinated by the intention of essence. It is the great and holy force of the universe. Essence is wisdom, bounty, teaching, and the waft of all life as an explosion of form. We can feel and speak essence. We can interact and love and laugh in essence. We can pray and glory in the grace of essence. It is the source of beauty, nature, us, creativity, intuition, and the power of, not over. When we return to reverence and acknowledge ourselves as the students here, the humble ones, we will once again have the capacity to step into essence. This is the power of the future, the force, and the source that all is said in this book. Now, when we talk about essence, and as I said, it's the sacred feminine, it's that beingness that comes forth, that's birthed into the world from her, and put into form by the sacred masculine. When we move to new earth, it's going to be the sacred web of life that we're in, and it's a total state of grace. So anything that comes from essence into form is divinity manifest. So anything that comes from us into form, to be a part of that sacred web of life, must, in its essence, be sacred. So when we make things, when we decide to make a pot or a car or anything, there are sacred truths that we cannot and will not be able to break when we go to new earth. So everything we make and everything that will be the way we live will be magic, power of, beauty, divinity, and because it's all in community with the sacred web of life. So now we're going to have a few slides about patriarchy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about patriarchy in form. So patriarchy, we can all define patriarchy. Patriarchy is scientific, linear, power over, violation, war, ego, competition. Patriarchy becomes manifest in form by how we think, by what we think, by what we perceive in the world, what our expectations are, what we want. And we are now in the dying throes of patriarchy. So what we have in our world is a direct reflection of what we perceive as normal, or what we have perceived as the right way, as progress, as the way to be in the world. The problem with patriarchy is that it destroys nature, which is sacred. It destroys the essential sacred function of form. Form has a sacredness to it, which nature shows us all the time. It bisects life. It does an overlay on life. It makes buildings and structures that are toxic and have no sacred nature to them. It is overstimulating, over noisy, filled with plastics and toxins. It becomes a violation of all of our sensibilities of life, physically, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. And it does the exact same thing to nature because again, our intention of what we make and put into form is that energy, that essence. So when we make something because it's convenient, or because it makes money, or because we're greedy, or whatever we do, and it's toxic in form, then it does the same to nature. It becomes this black hole that does not relate to nature, doesn't support life, it doesn't support the sacredness of life. And then it becomes a blasphemy to life. So as we go into new earth, magic, I fully believe, and when magic is the transformation of power, we will not be, and I included this slide because technology has taken us over and has separated us from life in a very arrogant sensibility that removes us from life, and it removes us from understanding that in the power and the sentient power of nature is life. And if we can walk back or walk forward to that incredible wisdom of the universe, we will have power at our feet. We will have power that we have never known, but it's power of the sweetness and the grace of the universe. So, Sandy, can we have the next batch of slides about the sacred feminine? Sandy? Thank you. Sandy, can you hear me?
She's getting it.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if I somehow got muted. Thank
No,
you,
I'm
Wayne.
sorry. There just is, yeah, I apologize. There just isn't a graceful way of transitioning. So here we go.
Yeah, totally understand.
There you go.
The sacred feminine, again, we can all have our own terms for it. It is standing in the fae and the intuitive and the wise and the source. It is standing in beauty and kindness and compassion. The sacred feminine, these pictures will show you about scale and life and form as beauty and function as beauty and form, and about natural materials and symbolism, texture, aliveness. We are all meant to be in this world fully alive, and we have all of our senses, and then of course our electrical body and our spiritual body, however many we have, to engage in this world. And that fuels us, it attaches us, and it puts us into this world. So form has just the same kind of emotions and beingness. I apologize, I'm outside, it's a helicopter. The same beingness that we have. So symbolism and light and surprise and mystery and groundedness and rootedness and aliveness and all of that relatedness that comes with being in this world becomes that in form when we stand in the sacred feminine. And the sacred feminine has that, as I said, that essence and source in her that is alive and fuels life and helps life, nourishes life, rather than taking from it. Sacred feminine in everything is nature, and in everything historically and in older cultures was a source of beauty, and was known in its proportions and its function as to be minimal, fit to its function, which we don't do nowadays. The bigger the better, the louder the noisier. It just is a lot of stuff thrown out there, and it's not minimal, and it's not fit to its function, and it's not designed to be, say, for example, a vessel or a chalice that engages and holds the sacred feminine. We've forgotten what texture is, we've forgotten what symbolism is, we've forgotten pattern, we've forgotten touch. I used to work in interior design, and if you ever watch a woman in an interior design center, I do this. I smell, I touch, I run my hand over it, I relate to it. Ancient cultures knew this really, really well and understood that all beauty was meaningful. All beauty had an impact on us. All beauty is alive. And and in that, once again, however we manifest that in the future, we will leave behind what our presumptions as to what the patriarchy is, and we will become into a world that is fully alive and engaged in almost an effervescent quality of the sacred web of life. And I feel very strongly that we will allow nature to go back to its wildness, much of it, that settlements will be very minimal, and that the settlements will be designed as community property, but also places we inhabit, places of symbolism and beauty and relationship, and so that we won't take from nature. We won't, without permission, we will engage for the joy of it. We will once again be grounded on the earth and rooted and be able to hear, because the noise and the overlay that we have put all over the world has completely bisected our understanding of the natural world. And I feel that very strongly that we've become so separate from nature that we see it as a Walt Disney show. You go to any science center and they have a video, and you watch a video, and okay, our kids have now seen nature. That's not being in the natural world. It's about, and Sandy, I think that's the last slide on that one.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm done with that part of the introduction. And so, Pat, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really extraordinary. That was really extraordinary, Charlotte. I feel like, how could the new earth be anything other than that?
Totally.
So how in the world we're going to get there? That's
No.
a good.
No idea.
And you're right. We do. I've heard and I feel that both dimensions, for lack of a better word, are existing simultaneously now, and we do flip back and forth. So I guess we just don't understand it intellectually. But yes. So I think my first, when we talked about putting the questions together, the first question that we agreed to talk about is what is the new earth and how does it feel? And I think also, let me interrupt you before you respond. We talked about that particular place that you go to and the story of being in that particular place.
Yeah, I am right now, as the energy is so bizarre. I think I've spent 3 nights this week staring at the stars all night. It's wild, fluctuating back and forth, burning. And what I'm really is interesting is I'm in Sedona, so of course it's even more interesting here. And I go to a trail every morning to walk, but before I talk about that, it's harder and harder for me to drive to Phoenix or Tucson. I can't do it. So when I go for a walk in this place called Fay Canyon, I've never experienced anything like it in my life, and I've been connected to nature. I live outside because I have environmental illness, and I love nature. I've always been really connected, and I've always talked to trees. You know, it's always been a complete experience for me. But in Fay Canyon, I know I enter into another zone, and I know it's 5th dimension, and it's almost like a physical portal. I walk through, and there are different stages I go through. I leave behind the 3 dimension and all the a 3 dimension, and I get to a place. As I walk, I pass these portals of these trees, and it's the most profound experience I've ever had. And I get to the end, and I'm in a completely another space, and I hear things. The other day I met an angel. But I'm in a state of grace as much as I can be, because I'm still very much 3-dimensional, or 3D. But I know I'm in another place where it's separate. I'm in the same trail that everyone else is seeing, but the feeling is sweet, effervescent. All of the boundaries are gone. I'm one with all of it, which sounds so airy-fairy. There's nothing like it I've ever experienced before, but I can feel all this shifting and changing. And I heard years ago from somebody that all the animals and all the decimation that we've created will be there in 5th dimension. And that 5th dimension is right here. You just can't experience it. And I always thought that was goofy, but it's really true. It's you're still there, but it's so lovely. And so, I mean, I'm barely even there, but I know there's spirits there to talk to me, and I know that I'm hearing that it's what I described in my book, which just arrived in my head. And I know as many of you are here, and as many of us are on this planet, everyone would have a different description. So New Earth to me is magic, which is just the transformation of standing in the power of the universe. And if you've ever read the Anastasia books, the Ringing Cedar Tree books, the series, I've only read the first, and it describes nature in a way that's just so profound. I just recommend it to anybody. But it's effervescent, it's magical, it's clean, it's light, it's higher. How can I describe it? It's not so dense and heavy as here. Here you feel like you're locked into almost this rock of beingness, and you're just on a higher level. There are no words. That's the closest I can come to describing it. But it's about when, and so I know when we leave patriarchy and as if we go forward naked with all that loss of because we're so familiar to the world we live in and we define everything we do by it. When we arrive there, it's as if we're going to be naked, but that's the only way we can experience it, because it's being. It's a state of beingness that's it's not about our heads anymore, and everything will come from that.
Is that your final answer?
For New Earth?
Yeah, I'm just teasing.
You know what?
Yeah, just for that one, just for that first question. But then,
you know what? I went. Yeah, the reason I said that, Pat, is I just went on, and I'm like, oh, what did she ask me?
Actually, looking at our little script here, the next question, which I think maybe you've already answered, is what is patriarchy and how does it manifest in physical, social, and emotional and spiritual form?
Yeah, it's those four elements that I want to talk about. Of course, we know we live in this world, this physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and then all of a sudden, all sorts of other levels. But form does the same thing. All form is sentient because it's made with intention. And whether it's a dark hole, or whether it's, and a lot of what we have in our world is very dark because of why, mountaintop removal and all these horrible things that we do. So it's very dark. And, but all form, including nature, has the same thing, is physical, social, emotional, and spiritual. And Christopher Alexander, who wrote these incredible tomes years ago, talked about, he gave wonderful examples of what form does and how it behaves. But so I'll keep it simple. Of course, the physical, we understand form is physical, but form that's made of real materials that are from a local area have a higher level of energy. They're not transported from somewhere else. Every local, I was going to say ecosystem, but that's a patriarchal term. Every place has its own energy. And so what you with permission in the future from nature, if we make anything from nature, natural materials breathe, they're healthy, they're a part of the earth in that area, and they're contiguous with that area, they're in community. But I do think in fifth dimension, we are going to be manifesting with magic. We won't be taking from earth so much because we'll understand that. And if we need something, we'll make it, and then we'll let it go to the universe. So it doesn't interfere as much. Socially, form engages us socially in a way that makes us do certain things, like shopping malls are pretty threatening. You go in, you shop, and you leave. I mean, a lot of people hang out because there's no other place to hang out because we're social beings. But if you go to Europe and you go to the older towns, it's very appealing because it's all based on human scale interaction. It's all based on, sitting in a cafe all day and talking to people and surrounded by buildings that are really textural and really beautiful and have a function and a meaning to them. It engages us socially. So that's spontaneous social engagement. Emotionally, design, pattern, proportions, scale, all have an impact on us. And traditional architecture, as in Europe, Bali, Africa, all would engage us emotionally. And symbolism, the materials, everything has an emotional feeling to us. And there's a reason for that, because it does. It, how, with the sizes, how we function with it, is it comfortable to function with? A lot of our modern patriarchal buildings are massive in scale. There's a lot of pastiche, which is just stuff put all over the place that makes no sense. And it's threatening. The materials are threatening and it's scary. It doesn't engage us emotionally and in a way that makes sense and is organized with the world. Also, traditional cultures always engaged within any reference, within any form, a reference to the sacred, whether it was prayer flags or, but what I'm really talking about is in towns and in cities, there was always a sense of spirituality. There was always a sense of, beyond the organization of the town and its relationship to the natural surroundings and to the human and animal activity. There was always a place for spirituality, and there was always a spiritual place in the home, and there was always a spiritual function on some level of every place that was. So patriarchy doesn't do that.
Okay. And then there's patriarchy.
Yeah.
The next question, Charlotte, is kind of the story of how it came. I know you did the vital world first, and then of course you did the New Earth. So kind of how did it happen? How did this evolve? You're writing these two books.
When I was 12 years old, this vision came into my mind. I was just a suburban kid, and I had this thing that came into my mind, and there was me at a table as an older person at an oak trestle table. I had a chalice in front of me, and there was a man standing next to me with a book open, and we were doing a service. I assumed it was the Bible, I don't know. And the world was burning out there. But where we were in teepees and surrounded by pine trees. We're up in the mountains. So I've always thought that I would survive some end time. I always thought that. And when I was in design school, I was designing an apartment, and this book in the library just flew open. I never heard of mandalas before. I was a New York City party girl. And I thought, okay, I'll just design the apartment like that. So there was always this, this conjunction between the two that I wasn't even aware of. And when I was about 27, 28, I got sick of working in fashion, and I just decided I'd go on a quest and decide what is really important to me. And I actually did. I went and traveled and explored a lot of New Age thinking. I went out to Taos. Like, what am I really doing? And then I became a mother and got serious about working and worked in interior design for a long time. But when I was about 32, the pieces came together. And I realized that my ability with design was also my ability to understand what I understood then as the sacred feminine, because I had read about it in college, and the two came together. My thoughts on it have certainly evolved a lot over the last couple of years. And about 20 years ago, I got very ill and didn't know what it was. It took about 9 years. And I've lived outside for 9 years now because of having environmental illness. It keeps me safer from environmental toxins. I don't overload so much. So I'm very aware and responsive to my environment now. And it's even more, I became outraged at what I came to realize what was sort of the outgrowth of patriarchy and what was happening in toxins in our world, and what it's doing to us emotionally and in every way. But now I really see where we're headed, and it's beautiful. And so that's where the pieces come together, is my sense of form, and my love of beauty. It's visceral. I mean, there are places, it's like a musician playing an instrument. It just sings. And it's incredible to me. So when we are around beauty, it's singing and it's alive, and it's not serious, it's joy.
The word that comes into my mind as I'm listening, Charlotte, is one you've used earlier, and that is effervescent. I think that's a word that can be used to capture a little bit of the energy of what you're talking about.
Yep, it's almost sparkling. We're very dense here. And I mean, I can feel that in my own body. It's very dense. And, but as it rises, it's almost like things become much more sparkly.
My experience, I think I'll share this, and just feels right to me to do. And then I think I'm looking at who's on the call, and it's so exciting to me to see who's on the call, and I can't wait to hear what people have to say. So I'm just going to say this one little piece. I have that experience as well of fifth dimension. I can feel the shift. And for me, just because it took so long to find out any way to use language for it, I kept trying, and I've got something that I think describes it pretty well. And for me, it's like a lot of us can remember those old Viewmaster slides that you put the little circle in, and then you go around. And then I guess it must be 3D. I think that's what they call it. Or a movie that's 3D. It's as if I'm walking in one of those Viewmaster slides, or I'm walking in a 3D movie at the theater. That's kind of the feel that I have when I feel this shift. It's just a little bit more tangible. I thought I would share it because it's another description.
But that's wonderful, Pat, because we each have our own opinions and experience of the world, our own lessons, whatever that is, and we're going to experience and understand New Earth is something very, very different. But the conversation now in the world, in my opinion, is where are we going? That this is really real. And a lot of the issues that we have now will drop away as we enter that.
Where are we going it's the most important question. How we get there is another question.
And maybe we don't even know where we're going, but having that conversation gives people hope, it gives them a future, it gives them, oh, I can go there. How beautiful.
It does exist.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that this would be a really great time to move to question and answer, because I'm imagining that
I'm done.
Hi, you're done. You got more to say?
No, I don't.
You will have lots of time, because people will have questions for you. And I think it's good to have the space to have, for people to ask questions of you. So that's what I'm thinking is a great time to transition.
I agree.
So does anybody have a question or a comment? I know it always takes a minute. Looks like, yeah, there's two. Oh, and you guys know how to raise hands. Well, you can negotiate that, huh, Sandy?
Chris, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
And then you also have a raise hand button, but if you raise your hand, I'll make sure that you, okay, and Beth after Chris. And then Colette, and then Gretchen.
Good morning, everybody. So happy to be here in Charlotte. And Patricia, thank you for this. Charlotte, wow. When where do I buy my ticket? How do I get there as quickly as possible? And
can you get one for me too?
I think that it's such an exciting time to be here in this dimension, because so much is shifting. And I know that we've all agreed to be here for this shift. And it's just kind of, always having to come back and remind myself that this is what's happening. And when all that's going on around us right now in the world can bring me down, I have to remember that this is part of the process of our growth. And hearing you speak is just a reminder of that. And I'm just, my comment is to thank both of you for sharing this wisdom.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And it is really hard right now. I think everyone is feeling, and it's just got even more intense. And it is, I'm lucky I'm in Sedona. If I was somewhere else, I just I'd lose my head. I'm lucky that I can go to a place that actually physically puts me somewhere. I'm not strong enough yet to be able to hold on to that all the time, even though it's ever present in my mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Beth. So grateful and so moved to be here with you all this morning, and to be here as by happenstance. I mean, I love when I let the universe direct traffic because I end up in a good intersection. So, boy, I have so many thoughts and you answered so many of my own internal questions, both of you did, as you were speaking. It's just beautiful. And Charlotte and Pat, thank you. And thank you so much, Sandy, for hosting this. You know, I just want to say, first off, I had an experience similar, Charlotte, in Sedona, Arizona. And I'll have to look back, but like 25 years ago, where I was engaged with nature in ways that it totally was beyond my comprehension. I walked up an entire mountain hillside in my bare feet. I mean, I was compelled to do it, and I wasn't questioning it because I went to a spiritual workshop. So I was there to be open to spirit, and it kept saying, okay, go do this, try this, talk about this, learn this, come on. And one would think, having had such a dramatic experience, that I'd come back and be, you know, spiritually on the ball, which, nope, sorry, you have to go through, first you have to go through finishing up your addictions, and then you have to have kids, and then you know, all that. But when I was in Sedona and I got back to the airport, it was so incredibly evident the difference between the spiritual world and the world that we were creating at the time, because at the airport, it was like I felt I had been slam dunked back into my body. People were rude, I mean, it was just amazing. I was like totally thrown off. So I got that real sense of, ooh, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. And right now, this human experience at this airport sucks, right? But I know it can come together. I mean, that's the part that I trust, and I have trusted even when I've been in my darkest own places in life. The fact is, light wins, love wins, and I just have to stay the course to understanding what my role, my purpose is. And Marianne Williamson said, if we get up in the morning and ask two questions, which is, who am I, and who do I serve, or why am I here? And I love you. The third, I'm going to add your third question was, where am I going? You know, what am I going to be doing to help with this new earth? So thank you so much, both of you, for, you know, igniting this within me, and I'm sure countless other women. And thank you.
That is just a wonderful story. And Sedona's incredible. But I had a similar experience years ago when I read books like The Mist of Avalon, and The Woman with the Alabaster Jar, and The Chalice and the Blade, and When God Was a Woman. I didn't know and all sorts of other incredible books like by Starhawk and all sorts of things. I didn't know what to do with that.
Right.
What do you do with that? And so I've always sort of back and forth, and, you know, most of my life spent doing interior decorating, which I hated. I mean, I love beauty, but I hated the ego part of it. And it's really hard to switch back and forth. But and now I can see in Sedona all these really angry people that come from the cities, and I'm like, oh, it's really hard. But what's amazing is how much stronger the fifth dimension is getting, stronger and stronger and stronger.
Thank you, Charlotte. And oh, thank you so much, Beth. Kala.
That was beautiful. It's really, really interesting. I'm sensing so much. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. I'm sensing so much now. It's like she is working through absolutely every one of us, you know, in remarkable ways from every direction, omnipresent, you know, and it's awesome for me to see and experience like each individual's unique experience of being totally transformed in a really fascinating way. And it's, yeah, it's really awesome how intense it is now. That, and it's beautiful to see the uniqueness of each person's path and experience and expression. So thank you very much. It's beautiful to hear you. The one thing that's been more and more strong for me, it was years ago when I was in robes up in the mountain, up in the Himalayas, that I said, if I'm going to have a God, why on earth would I heify it? I'm sheifying my God. So it's been she for me ever since then. And as I did that, it was in an interesting area with a lot of ancient sort of historical stuff. But it was like I felt the earth like a cranial adjustment, you know, like with a carpet shift, like underneath me, you know, to bring my God into she and the present. And the one thing that's strong with me is that she contains he. It's S-H-E. And so, or her, H-E-R. And the non-dual, and it's really interesting in the ancient Judaic somehow, and that thing of her being fed up with the patriarchy is in Jeremiah in the Old Testament. She says, I'm tired of these old guys. They've destroyed everything I told them to do. They haven't followed through on what I wanted. And now I'm just working through everybody directly through themselves. And people don't realize that's just like there in the old school. But the history of it, and I'm hoping to do a workshop on some of this stuff. Asherah is in the Old Testament. It's all over the place. Became the Shekhinah, but the Yahweh was married to the divine feminine. And that in the future, that it's not a duality, but that it's the androgen. And I'm not sure why, but in the old Judaic, I should look it up again, the hermaphrodite and the androgen were associated with, by I don't know whom, with the Judaic. And that sense of that she is both he and she, that it's not that the duality is our crucifixion, and the unity of the androgen. And I think it's so much related to all of these young people saying with the transgender and the infinite dimensionality of the genders and the omnigendered and the a this and the all of these things, and realizing that gender is so multifaceted, but that the divine feminine, as we call it, is both he and she. It's non-dual. And I saw that very much in your examples, which was really interesting, because you didn't go out of structure when you showed the divine feminine. You just showed the beauty and the harmony in structure and form, as well as the expressions and the creativity. So it was interesting to me, because that was like a really strong theme for me. It has been, but especially this morning, that it's an integrity, it's a non-duality, but it's an integral non-duality. It's the androgen. And each of us, I mean, it's really strong in most of us. It's not that we're only one or only the other. We're an integrity of these elements, and the power and the beauty and the purity go together. So that androgen quality is what seems to me very prominent in the new utterance.
Yep.
I apologize. I had to get out of the sun because my camera was getting too hot. My phone was getting too hot. And then all my papers started flowing away. Here I am with a wiggly phone.
It's fine.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really beautiful. Thank you, Kala. Okay, next is Gretchen, Peggy, Johanna, oh, and Brenda. Okay. Gretchen, can you unmute yourself?
I think I'm unmuted now. Is that,
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So thank you so much, Charlotte, for talking about your deep work that you're bringing forth into the world for all of us to benefit from. And thank you, Pat, for helping Charlotte to speak about this work, and thanks to everyone for your comments so far. The way that I think it was resonating for me most today, the conversation so far, is a strong sense that we are Mother Earth in form, that we've risen from her, we are her, and that one way of getting to where you're describing is a deep, deep rootedness in her, and listening to her, and what, you know, just what you're doing every day of your life, that we connect more and more deeply to her. She shows us the way. And I think for me personally, the way right now is actually about letting go. Letting go of all the busyness, letting go of the running here and there, letting go of buying things. I think for me, there's a huge feeling of letting go of consumerism. And as we let go of all this buying and making, you know, she will show us what the important things are to hang on to, and how those need to be made. You know, in using her principles as you're describing in your work, Charlotte. And I'm so excited about where we're going. Totally don't know how we're going to get there either, but just a quick story about a client of mine. I do psychotherapy as well, and my client had been part of the Peace Corps and had been in a remote village, and had been describing what it was like to be in community gathering water in these vessels that were made, and how joyous it was, just that simple task. And then in contrast, coming back into our community here in Ipsy, going into the Target store and seeing just rows and rows of like hundreds of just one thing, like, you know, hundreds of anything, Tupperware or plastic containers, hundreds of different types of plastic containers that we surely don't need. And she was just like completely overwhelmed, and you know, trying to figure out how to live between, how to get back to that other world that she had been in. Not that there isn't poverty and a lot of suffering there, but how do we combine, you know, what we know about how to live in community, and how to use our resources and our wealth for good, but how to get back to that simplicity and beauty. I am just really excited thinking about this today, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you for that. In the book, The New Earth, I talk about the myths of patriarchy, and one of them is
Yes.
progress. And
Is what?
Progress.
Thank you.
And the myth is we have a better life. I don't think so. I mean, if you've ever read anything about other cultures, the incredible connection to the earth, to spirit, to animals, to communication, to understanding. Like yesterday, the wind shifted here, and there's a great book called A Story Like the Wind by Lawrence Vander Post, and it's a story like the wind in a far off place. They go hand in hand. Incredible story about the Bushman, and he grew up in somewhere in southern Africa, and knew the Bushmen really as well as he could have as a white man, but his understanding of them was extraordinary. And if we think in our arrogant, divorced from nature society that we have more, I don't think so. And that's the first thing. And the other thing is, I'm having a moment. I forget. But what you said was wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, beautiful, Gretchen. Thank you. Okay, Peggy.
Could you say the name of that book again?
A Far Off Place is one of them, and A Story Like the Wind. It's one of my, they come hand in hand. It's fiction, but it's Lawrence Vanderpost. And he grew up with having the Bushmen as his, they worked on his family's farm, which puts it in an awkward situation, but he knew them really well and would go on long trips with them. And they lived with the story of the wind. Oh, what I wanted to say yesterday was the wind shifted here and it came with another story. And we've lost that. Native Americans have that. Cultures all around the world have that, but we don't hear that anymore. And in every rock, every bush, it's like going on how people used to go on a walkabout in Australia. Everything had a song and a myth and a story, and the wind would shift and you knew that story was changing. And so those books are incredible, what they say and tell.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Peggy. Thank you, Gretchen.
Hi, Charlotte. Hi, Pat. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I've been watching Charlotte's work and I had the privilege of being part of Charlotte's work, helped edit her book a bit. Just that you're such a visionary, Charlotte, and you just keep evolving with your grasp of the foundation of our world, like this really importance of nature, and I'm really, really grateful. It's so meaningful for me to be here today. Thank you both, and thank you, Pat. I've been experiencing recently, there was an ecocidal attack on the land where I live. So the people came in with big machines. It's just been happening over the solstice, made it more heartbreaking. But today to hear you speak, Charlotte, about that fifth dimension and how things that are destroyed are still, there, it really helped to start the healing process for me, because I'm still so very, traumatized by witnessing that ecocide last week. And if you feel like it, maybe tell me a bit more about that aspect, that the trees, the plants, the wildlife. I don't think they destroyed any wildlife. I think the wildlife were just sort of chased away, but certainly some birds' nests and things like that. So how are these parts of nature still there? And I know I go into the places that they destroyed and I'm still feeling the spirits of what was there. So maybe just tell me a bit more about that. And you're fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here.
It's really painful and horrible to watch. But we do it, and we do it in our lifestyle, the way we live. And I drive a car and I have a computer. We do it all over the world, us. But that will change. That's number one. It's really, really hard to watch, and it's heartbreaking. It's just what goes on underneath the soil, the bugs, everything. Last summer, because I live outside, a lot of interaction with creatures, and I had a tarantula befriend me. And she would come and she'd hang out with me while I ate lunch, and she'd be sitting underneath my legs, and she would tap my foot. And this year I saw a bunch of RVs drive up into her home territory. That's a small example. It's really hard to watch, but for some reason I know that it's all there in the fifth dimension, because we only perceive about 10%. So what we're perceiving right now is the third dimension. And there's also a Native American prophecy. I heard this, or I saw it online, that it's all there alive, or someone told me that's all there alive in the new earth. It's all there alive in spirit. So that makes me feel much better. And so I wonder often, so what is this that's going on? And what I personally believe, and other people would feel differently, is that the earth is always going to be here, unless something bizarre happens, that nature will evolve, or nature will be the same. I think nature will evolve. And I'm not being callous, because I really, truly do care. It's really hard to see. But what's really happening is for us humans, not because we're more special. I don't think we're any more special, but it's our destiny and our fate to evolve, to go backwards to what we remember years ago in ancient times, how we lived and how we were really connected, but also to do it in a new way, that's really how we're meant to be. So the evolution is about us, and nature's going to be there when we get there. So we're rejoining nature.
Thank you, Charlotte. That really helps my healing process this week. Thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
a
you.
beautiful question. Actually, Johanna, I hope you don't mind, but Beth would like to ask a question in relationship to Peggy's question. So maybe we can have just a quick little comment here, and then we'll get to you.
Just, hi, thank you so much. I'll be as brief as possible. Just real quick, I saw Thomas Friedman speak about 15 years ago. He wrote the book Hot, Flat, and Crowded. And he does opinion pieces now for the New York Times. But one of the things that I was so heartened, he came on and the very first thing he said was, there are two systems in our world. And I understand that's a male term, system. But we have systems. And he said there's two systems in our world that will self-correct. He said, one is our economic system. We've been watching that happen. We're watching that cycle through, goes up and down, but it crashes, like when we get too much going on. He said the other system is our natural world. He said it will self-correct. It will not allow us to take things to such an extreme that we will destroy it. And when I heard that, I was so heartened by that, because I believe that. Like, I think we're seeing it happen right now. I think we've had, it's not retaliatory. It's a natural response for nature to say, oops, too much extreme going one way or the other. I'm going to help you out here, kids, because you guys are kind of dense. Somebody said, we're dense, right? We're a bunch of knuckleheads. Like we know what's happening and we still don't even turn toward it and do, self-care it. So anyway, if that helps you all, and one prayer I do when I see destruction, I see an accident, my prayer is, oh, the healing has begun, help is on the way. And I just think that, like, somebody's going to be coming along, somebody, whether it's 911 or, an activist, you saying, Peggy, oh my gosh, I'm going to pray for those people. I'm going to pray for that planet. I'm going to pray. That's what we can do, I believe, to really help the situation. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you.
Wonderful, Johanna. And then after we hear from Brenda, after Johanna, perhaps we can just all do some cross-talking. And I beg your pardon, unless Pat, you had a conversation to have. Yeah, I love everyone's, you're all so wise. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Johanna.
Hi. Charlotte, I didn't know you before I read your books before this, and they are visionary, and you're a mystic, and I so appreciate everything that you're sharing. And hi, Pat, it's good to see you. Pat and I are in the same area. We live here in Michigan. See, this is Michigan. Ann Arbor, close to Detroit. And that's given me, I'm just going to work backwards from my notes, actually. I'm a lover of science. I taught science. It's hard for me. I live in an opposite of tensions between a scientific knowledge of the world and the universe and a natural knowledge and understanding of the world. So I like what you said, Beth, about self-correction. This is going to sound very callous, and I apologize if I hurt anyone or trigger anyone. The pandemic is a self-correction. It just is. And nature is always trying to find a balance. It's called stasis. That's why we have storms when we've got climate change, because nature is trying to regulate itself. And to what Peggy was saying about wildlife, I haven't heard crickets in the last 5 years around my home. And we live kind of out in the country, and there's no pesticides on our land, but where are the crickets? It just bums me out. Something that was so important to me as a child, just falling asleep. So that's kind of where my heart is and where my brain is right now, talking about the finding beauty and finding the effervescence of that's available to us in nature. I often feel it among man-made places. If I slow myself down enough in a city like Detroit, and maybe this is just my empathy, I effervesce over the souls that are still present there, the human souls. More so than when I'm in a forest. When I'm in a forest, I'm just like overwhelmed. And I'm just kind of receiving. So I've just got a bunch of disjointed thoughts here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share them. And I wanted to mention one thing about Kala. Thank you so much for sharing the book of Jeremiah and the Old Testament, which I'm not familiar with at all, not being much of a even lapsed Christian, about the androgyny of spirit. That's a place I need to come to. For me, spirit is always feminine, female. I worship the goddess in all her forms, dark and light. It's hard for me to pull the masculine into that, and that's kind of where I feel I need growth. So I think that's all I have to say. I so appreciate your listening. It was very disjointed, I know, but I just had so many thoughts as everyone was speaking. Thank you.
Well, I, for one, gleaned a lot from what you said, Johanna. Thank you so much for sharing your heart.
I just wanted to respond with the androgen. It's really interesting. I see that as a her. I see it as a she. It's really interesting in nature. And when I first came back to the States after many years in other places, Asia and Australia, I met some doctors, a husband and wife doctor, who actually worked with, and I think it's catastrophic in some way. There are many, many babies that are born androgynous. And unfortunately, up until they're just changing it, they would operate on them. We would ask the parents, do you want the child to be a he or a she? And, or to see which one was dominant. I actually met someone eventually who, they were a rabbi and they had both sets in their body naturally. And it seems there are more children who are either born that way or just we didn't hear about them before. But that unity, it seems that nature itself is enunciating it. And I don't see it as, it's really funny because I empathize with you. I come from a background of astronomy and cosmology and astrophysics and all of that, astrobiology. And I love science. It gives, I mean, it's her art form. It's elegant. It's how she creates this incredible multiplicity and diversity. But it was funny when you said to integrate the masculine in her. I see her and all the divine feminine goddesses is already androgynous, like Durga, you know, who is, or Kali for that matter. But so that was just interesting. It was just like my little ears went up. It's like, no, she's not. The androgen is still she. But it's also, forgive me for intruding here, but she, literally in the physical, the mystery of the sacred mother who impregnates herself is because the male part is already within her body, like literally. It's like the fish who, if the male fish dies, all the other fish are female, and one of the females just becomes the male. And I don't know how, somebody was talking about it yesterday, I don't know the selection process, but they are inherently both. I don't know, and just one of the females just takes on that aspect grows bigger and becomes the male of the group. It's very interesting. Our paradigms are so much the human, the duality, but all of us are so androgynous anyway.
This
True.
is fascinating.
I just, as I was thinking about that, I'm just going to make one more quick sciencey thing. Chromosomally, girls are on the 23rd chromosome. Your gender is determined. XX is female. XY is male. All eggs are female. And it's only the male sperm, which could be XX or XY, or is XY, has a 50% chance. That's why we have a 50% chance of being born male or female. So for me, that's how I wrap my head around androgyny and hermaphroditity, which is, I think, is what you were talking about with the children being born. And it is a shame that the babies were not allowed to choose for themselves. So
Who knows?
That's it. Before we continue on, let's hear from Brenda. Yeah, no, this is great. This could be. I think we have a topic, Anne, for another Death Throes conversation, don't we? Because we could certainly fill up an hour and a half on this conversation easily. Let's hear from Brenda, and then we still have, with our time remaining, some closing and some cross conversation. So, Brenda.
Hi, Pat. It's been a while.
Hi, Brenda.
Nice to see all of you and a few new faces. You've pulled me into that androgen conversation all of a sudden, away from what I was focused on. You know, and I think we all know the androgen was honored in ancient times. And so I think that the expression that we're having with all genders now is a way of talking about that and, you know, raising our consciousness to honor all beings. Charlotte, I wanted to ask you, thank you for sharing, and I'm new to your work. And you were talking about the dimensions, and in work, I was actually talking to a client yesterday and describing the multi-dimensions we already live in, and that we don't even actually think about, like your tarantula has a dimension of consciousness. And when you befriend that being, it befriends you. And I've done that with animals. And what I wanted to ask you was, in this reality that we're in, and we know that there are other dimensions, and you talk specifically more about the fifth dimension, how can we more readily, as I think the term is, Sandy could probably help me with this term, sidewalk friendly, or I forget what it's called.
Oh, a sidewalk. You're talking pedestrian.
Pedestrian friendly.
That's it. Brenda's been hanging around me a long time.
So that people who are steeped in such horrific situations, they can't even go to that place of thinking that all of this is in order, because it's affecting them so personally. And, you know, members of their family getting killed in their backyard, like in our city, and things like that. And yet for me to then talk about visualizing that which they can't even. Carolyn May be aware of it, where she was in, I think it was in LA, and she was traveling, and they said, don't go to that area, it's a tough area, and she ended up in it. She was in a car with someone, and it was in the midst of a riot happening, and they were right in the middle of it, and she wasn't affected until she made eye contact with the people. And once she did, they saw her and they attacked the car. So she was in that liminal space, I feel. And, you know, we can live in that. And how do we help words to help others see what they cannot see? I know we can do it ourselves and creating that world, and we're doing it also in physical. Yet I wonder, do you have words to help transmute that and transition so that we can do more of that with others?
It's a really, really good point. I don't think there's a real answer to that. I really do believe that each one of us has a message or a path or a destiny, and that there's also the tipping point. I think a great many of us, you're right, a great many of us don't even have the privilege to experience what, I mean, I was going to say to experience what at least I'm experiencing, but every day my life is at risk. So I can a little bit understand, but I really can't. But I think that we each, if we stand in our own truth and move forward in that, we move the energy forward. That's the first thing. The second thing is to stand in circle and compassion and listen. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, everyone has, there's some people who are really good with law, and there's some people who are really good with social organizing. I'm not one of them. I don't have one of those kinds of gifts. So I think there's as many people as there are in the world, there are as many voices, and it's really hard to express to other people whose lives are really at risk and who live in horrible circumstances that there's another way, except that there is another way. I mean, not another way, that there is another future. That doesn't help. I mean, if I were living in ways that I can't imagine, it would probably piss me off. I'd be like, how can you say that? You know, this is horrible. What are you going to do to help me? Or what is the world going to do to help? It's a complicated question. I just think that we need to just we need to be compassionate, to listen, to understand that every person has their own. Patriarchy is invasive, and it's a disease, and it affects everybody. And what's on the surface may not be what's as visibly obvious. So that's all I have to say with that. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you, Charlotte. With a couple, well, it looks like we have one more minute in our call. I know Elise would like to say something as well. And I just have some closing remarks. So is everybody okay to hang out for just a few more minutes? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Okay. Elise, go ahead.
Excellent. I just first wanted to thank everybody for being on this call. Charlotte and Patricia, Sandy. Oh
I know, it's so good to see you. And I said Elisa, not Elise, sorry. Sorry.
But one thing that I've been hearing as I'm listening to this is everyone's like, you know, what do we do? How do we get from where we are today to where we want to see in this new earth that Charlotte so eloquently paints this gorgeous picture? And yes, I mean, I hear it, I read it, and I'm so ignited and activated. And, you know, what can we do? And I just wanted to say it's showing up as who we are inherently, tapping into our core essence of our heart, and really being intentional about going forth and walking through with knowing that Mother Earth is where we all come from. And it's that oneness, and being in circle of that compassion and holding space for our fellow sisters who are out there like Charlotte, just, you know, every day just doing what she can to survive and thrive. And how can we help one another keep going to thrive and be who we are, and forgetting about this whole, like, not forgetting about it, but taking this dominant culture that many of us were brought up in, and have been, because of this dominant culture, we've been silenced as who we are on our inside. It's superseding the dominance with now partnership and bringing the two together. Like Kayla said, it's really just holding that spectrum of light and dark, feminine and masculine, and really partnering all of that. And that's how we're going to see this new future. And so, Charlotte, I just wanted to say thank you. Like, you know, I mean, I feel like I've been this dark, you know, like in this cave living all alone with these thoughts of how, you know, important Mother Nature is. And I thought I was alone, but then poof, you came into the world, into the knowledge. So thank you. Is there any, like, can you give us any advice on like one little thing that we can do to help really visualize and help this new earth come about?
No. I can't, because I can only talk for myself. I just think what I said. I mean, I think it's hard, it's difficult. We're burning and through the fire, and we can see it everywhere. And but the future is really beautiful. And you know, it's hard, but it's also wonderful and great. I think being grounded, being rooted, being compassionate, understanding we're all faulty human beings. I think I posted it's oh, my stupid brain.
Oh, nope, we don't allow that here. Sorry, you're just gonna, I'm gonna edit this video. So I don't think I can, but I'm sorry, not on my watch. So would you rephrase that?
I posted a poem last night that's from the time of the Library of Alexandria, the time that Jesus lived, and it's from, I got the reference from the Book of Longings, which is by Sue Monk Kidd. It's her new book. It's an incredible poem, obviously written by a woman about the divergent character of her and of life, but it's beautiful, powerful, and incredible. But the interesting thing about that book is that it's the girl is, she devotes her life, the wife of Jesus, it's fiction, devotes her life to Sophia, and he becomes crucified, and we know Jesus' story. I just think we keep going. And I also think that the sacred feminine is so strong right now that we're almost on a ride and we really almost don't have control.
What was the book?
The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd.
The book of what?
Longings.
Longings. I'll send out the names of all the books that were mentioned on this call. I've been taking copious notes. Charlotte and to Elisa, thank you so much, because you better articulated how I would have summarized what I took away from the call. So you made my job here very, very easy. I'm so grateful for that. And also asking the question, what can each one of us do? And Charlotte, I heard from you that it is earlier in the call, or maybe it was someone else, that it was you, that we all have our own, filters in which we show up in the world, and our own ways of which to do things. And we all perceive things in a different way. So how we respond to them would be personalized to who we are. And so what I took away from you as well is that to answer that question for me personally is to better recognize the divine sacred in form when it is there, and also when it isn't there, and to ask myself, how am I looking at that form, whether it's social, emotional, or tactile. And I'm a very tactile person. I usually cannot sit down this long either. I'm very kinesthetic. So that really resonated with me. And the last thing I'll just say, and this was regarding Gretchen's comment, and she had to leave, right? I didn't think I saw her here. And that is that we don't know where we're going, and that question is, where are we going? And you said you don't know, and it made me think about my grandson, who is on his journey, leaving a place where he knows so comfortably. Everything is there for him. It's his reality, and he's about to go on the journey, one of the journeys of his lifetime, and he doesn't know either where he's going. And his and his due date is in August. So he'll find out in late August what this world is and what's there to be. But I just see that birth and rebirth constantly in our world. And it just reminded me of not really knowing, but being in a state of awe and wonder, and also paying close attention. I am so grateful to all of you, and to Pat. You are such an incredible listener. And I'm so grateful for you to have even sparked this conversation several months ago when you reached out to Ann and I to say, you've got to know Charlotte and her work. And here we are today, and what it has developed. So thank you, Pat, for.
Yes, thank you, Pat.
Thank you. And thank you, Sandy and Pat, and certainly Charlotte, to be able to have the conversations we had that were so rich up until today, and then to be able to just bask in all that we have talked about and all that you have written about and talked about, Charlotte. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sandy.
We had our own Philosophers Cafe for about weekly. Every Saturday morning we've been meeting, and it naturally birthed into where we are in this moment, and with all of you. And I've learned so much from all of you personally, and I thank you all for being here. So again, a recording of this call, and the books, I think, and any mentions will come to you most likely by the end of the day. I try not to be too committal. And again, I just thank you so much. If you'd like to stay in touch and learn about more things, come sign up for Sarah's newsletter, find us on Facebook. All of that will be in a letter to you. And we hope to see you again. You're all just amazing. I kind of love you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Take good care. Be safe.
Thank you so much. Yeah, be well. We enter the summer.